Good afternoon and welcome to the Midday News. Here's what we have in the bulletin. Storm Bret could pose a threat to Jamaica. While it is unusual for Jamaica to be impacted by major storms this time of the year, the ODPEM remains on high alert. And later in sports, schoolgirl athlete Alana Reid inks professional deal. Thank you for joining us. I'm Shamela Pullen. Here are the details. Tropical storm Bret could pose a threat to Jamaica, the warning from the Met Service, as early projections now indicate the system will come close to the island by Monday. It was formed in the Atlantic Ocean yesterday. Forecasters say the storm could become a hurricane entering the Caribbean on Friday. It is the second storm of the 2023 Atlantic hurricane season. And the Director General of the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, Richard Thompson, says while it is unusual for Jamaica to be impacted by major storms this time of the year, the ODPEM remains on high alert.
In terms of it, you having the hurricane season starting even before June, because we have been seeing now more so than normal early season hurricane. And we do have late season hurricane as well, with hurricanes being formed beyond November.
So we could be looking at a hurricane season that potentially starts in May and ends in December?
And end in December or start even before May.
Mr. Thompson, who was speaking on the morning agenda on Power 106, adds that due to climate change, meteorologists are considering extending the hurricane season.
It's really not an exact science. We say that all the time. It's really not an exact science. It's predictive science. And so this season is predicted to be normal in terms of systems forming. Normal in meteorological term is 14 systems. But you can find the first part of the season being very active, and then it kind of taper down.
As summer 2023 approaches, a warning from the St. James Public Health Department about rising temperatures. Medical Officer of Health for the parish, Dr. Tanique Bailey-Small, says persons can develop serious medical problems from the heat. Therefore, the necessary precautions must be taken. Speaking at the recent municipal corporations meeting, she said the elderly and children are most vulnerable.
In terms of helping ourselves to maintain, in terms of keeping well hydrated, wearing clothing that will promote proper ventilation, and also trying to avoid, where possible, prolonged periods, not just in the heat of the sun, but also in other environments. And particularly, our elderly population tends to be greatly affected, and of course it can result in significant illness.
To a TVJ News follow-up now, a catastrophe is on the horizon in Jacksonville, St. Andrew. The view of a geological expert as he weighed in on plans for a new housing development in Travis Stock. Parts of the land have since collapsed. More in this report. The housing developments in Jacks Hill, St. Andrew have been flagged as potentially problematic. The country's leading mind on geology, Professor Simon Mitchell from UWI-Mona, says the area is not suitable for development as the rocks are weak and unstable. Speaking on TVJ Smile Jamaica today, Professor Mitchell says the concerns are not new. He says they have been raised some 20 years ago and nothing has changed.
You've got an escarpment, a series of mountains that rise from the Ligony Plain. And those mountains are there because there's a giant fault going through. And that fault zone, and it's not a single fault line, it's a fault zone, is something like 1.5 to 2.5 kilometers wide. So in other words, one set of rocks is moving against another set of rocks. And the fact you've got mountains beyond is an indication that the mountains have gone up.
So there's a potential of a disaster waiting to happen. And with the hurricane season upon us, persons living or building in the area should brace for any eventualities.
So when it rains heavily, it's going to soak in, it's going to make the rocks weaker, and there is the potential that they could fail and you get big landslides. Equally, the water runs off, and the more buildings and tarmac you have up there, the more water that runs off, it's got to go somewhere. It's got to run down guys, it's got to run down the roads and things. That can cause problems, and there you get your landslides and your debris flows. And we talked about debris flows in the past coming down and affecting those communities bordering those mountains.
But Professor Mitchell says if persons want to continue to build, appropriate engineering solutions must be put in place. However, he was not certain how this could be done.
We actually look very carefully at when we're building these things, and we maybe don't give the permission to build some of them because the engineering solutions aren't sufficient. I think that we have to look at this in terms of a country and how we go forward. If we have basically a tropical system that comes across this year, I guess we're due for one. People say we're due for an earthquake as well. But if we have these things come across, we will start seeing the problems we've seen before.
The Jamaica Household Workers Union says it has seen an increase in the number of sexual harassment complaints from its members. Caribbean coordinator for the International Domestic Workers Federation, Imani Duncan Price, says the numbers grew especially during the COVID-19 pandemic.
We don't have exact numbers, because we also know there is underreporting. People don't feel safe, and they also feel that if they report it, it won't make a difference anyway. Instead of actually saying anything, they just leave the job, as you would have heard in some of the testimonials tonight. We've had workshops sponsored by different like UN Women and so forth around this issue, and the amount of reports that we've gotten have been over 100 over the last few years.
Mrs. Duncan Price says when the Sexual Harassment Act set for Monday, July 3 is enforced, it will go a far way in helping members.
It's important because domestic workers don't have a domestic violence workplace policy in the home. Their workplace is a home. So for them to actually have redress, a place where they can issue their grievance in a real way, they can work with the union, and the union can also support them in going to the Bureau of Standards and the tribunal to make the complaints and to be heard fairly and in a quick and timely manner.
It's time for a break. Stay with us. More stories when we return. Welcome back to the Midday News. Some 68 persons at the Sir John Golding Rehabilitation Center will be provided with prosthesis. They're among the first beneficiaries under the government's New Life, New Limb program announced by Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton during his sectoral debate in May. More in this report. Meet Fitzroy Freeman. Mr. Freeman says he was diagnosed with diabetes when he was a child. However, his condition worsened in the last few years, and so last year he was told that his leg had to be amputated.
I get a stick in it, so I have to do an amputation. My cause of sugar was a family inheritance. It had passed on from my mother at that age. Understand? So having sugar at that age, I could change my lifestyle.
And Mr. Freeman is not alone.
I lost my leg because of diabetes, sugar, because I never used to take care of myself. Because, it come like, me just eat anything, me drink everything. Only thing me not drink alcohol, me drink beverage, sweet beverage, me put all the sugar in my hand and lick it.
Speaking during a tour of the rehabilitation center recently, Health Minister Dr. Christopher Tufton says more than 90% of the approximately 300 Jamaicans who lose a limb each year do so due to non-communicable diseases, NCD, particularly diabetes.
Call it in Jamaican language sugar. just to be very clear. And diabetes creates complications. It creates complications in various forms, including poor circulation, which then leads to the life in that limb, that leg, becoming less sensitive, less active, and if you get a cut, it turns into a sore and it don't get better, etc., etc., and it can spread. This is why the limb is lost.
And while the ministry continues to encourage a healthy lifestyle, it's trying to help those who can't afford a limb, which is why the New Limb, New Life program was initiated. Dr. Tufton says this will help to re-engage them into society.
Hence, we announced a $50 million Jamaican support to the Disabilities Association, which is an agency under the Ministry of Labour, to support these patients who cannot afford to have a prosthetic leg or arm, a limb, who may have to subsidize in some cases, but at least they have a chance, a better chance, particularly those who can't afford it.
Dr. Tufton says the program supports the Know Your Numbers initiative. This aimed at getting Jamaicans to do regular screenings to know their health status and modify their behavior to reduce illness and premature death. It's now time for the Business Minute.
The Board of Stationery and Office Supplies will meet this week to consider a stock split for the company. A statement from the company said the market value of its stock has been on a consistent growth trajectory, but it added that the liquidity of the stock is also a significant consideration for Wednesday's board meeting. SOS closed yesterday at $20. It has traded at a high of $24.40 and a low of $11.55 in the last 52 weeks. Further afield, Intel will spend more than $33 billion to develop 2 chip-making plants in Magdeburg, Germany, as part of its expansion push in Europe. Berlin has agreed subsidies worth nearly 10 billion euros with the US chip maker, more than the 6.8 billion euros it had initially offered Intel to build 2 leading-edge facilities in the eastern city. The German deal marks Intel's third biggest investment in 4 days. It unveiled plans on Friday for a $4.6 billion chip plant in Poland, another European Union member, while Israel said on Sunday that Intel would spend $25 billion in a factory there. And that's it for the Business Minute. I'm Shane Masters.
Time now for the top regional and international stories.
In the region, Ghana's local government and regional development minister Nigel Daramnel was arrested last night as police continue investigations into allegations of sexual assault of a 16-year-old girl. The Ghana Police Force confirmed the arrest in a brief statement. It said the police are investigating a case in relation to an allegation of rape against the minister. Earlier, the law firm representing the embattled minister denied his involvement in the sexual assault of the 16-year-old, who was reported to be in the care of a child care and protection agency. In the U.S., a massive search is underway by air and sea to find a tourism submarine that went missing on Sunday. 5 people were on board to tour the wreckage of the Titanic. As of Sunday afternoon, officials estimated they had somewhere between 70 and 96 hours of air left. It's still unclear why the submersible lost contact with the ship that was on the surface. According to Ocean Gate, there's a system on board that is supposed to alert the pilot if something has gone wrong aboard the vessel. And those were the top regional and international stories. I'm Shane Masters.
Thank you, O'Shane. We head to a quick break. When we come back, we'll have your midday sports report with Jermaine Brown.